Northwest Arkansas is an artist's dream. From the Walden Arts Center to Eureka Springs, the arts are thriving in the Ozark community. Investment, promotion, and celebration of the arts has become the staple of the area. But the Ozarks have nurtured artists' creativity long before the Waltons, the university, or the quirky Eureka Springs art scene. On this episode of Art in the Ozarks, we'll hear from Katie Holt, the curator of Bentonville's Museum of Native American History, and from Joshua Youbgblood, the Associate Dean of Special Collections, as we dive into this history of Northwest Arkansas's first artist.
My name is Katie Holt. I am the curator of the Museum of Native American History, and we cover 24,000 years of history, starting from the Paleolithic period all the way up until about the 1940s, 1950s. The first tribes that lived here are the Caddo, Osage, and Quapaw. Most of the tribes that were here originally were nomadic, and they traveled along the river system until they were able to find places to settle down. When they would be traveling, they would also travel to grab rock resources and clay. So they would bring back the pottery tools. We have such rich soil in this area that it's great for making clay. And so they were able to gather the clay and build such intricate pottery. You see a lot of red clay, and it's very soft to touch, which means that it's great to build clay with. All the pottery that we have in the museum kind of varies from tribe to tribe, but there are similarities between them. The Caddo, for example, has a lot of pottery that represents their ideology and their religious belief system. Their symbolism was really important, and that's carried through all of the tribes. The Quapaw have pottery that looks like dogs and that look like raccoons and frogs. So one important thing to know is when you're looking at Northwest Arkansas pottery, you are seeing not only just the artwork, but you're seeing their interpretation of what their worlds look like. So for the Quapaw specifically, they have this idea of animals having this sacred power to travel into different realms. So for example, you have frogs and beavers that can be on land but also can go underwater. With this idea, they believed that because they can go underwater, that is their underworld, this other realm that they can transport to. And so they believed that there was great power in the symbolism with the art that they were making. As they came into the post-contact era, trading became so much more popular as a part of survival. You will see beadwork. The beadwork traded from Venice to different parts of Germany and then brought over to the US. All of the beadwork that you see on historic clothing and items like an Apache sunrise dress or maybe a really beautiful beaded vest, all of those beadwork pieces come from Europe. And it kind of became a fashion staple for indigenous people, and it still continues to be that today. Though we don't have any tribal nations here in Arkansas, there are Native American communities that are still here. They just maybe aren't as represented in the public sphere as they, probably would like to be. You often have people coming in the museum that think Native American history is something completely of the past, that it's ancient or a time that is over 100 years ago when it's not. And it's just as important to honor and protect these pieces because the tribes not only, have such significance tied to these pieces, but their ancestors and the generations to come.
By the late 18th century, European settlers began to move westward from Tennessee into Arkansas. Many came with very few physical possessions, but they brought artistic traditions that continue to this day. Joshua Youbgblood will talk about the history of folk and community arts that has thrived in the Ozarks.
So my name is Joshua Youbgblood. I'm Associate Dean for Special Collections. I'm an archivist and a historian, and there are certain aspects of Arkansas culture, including folk culture, I have great expertise on. But folk art or folklore Folk art in particular is art created by people for people. But it also could be things that people make it as part of their daily lives or as part of their regular cultural transmission, so that it's passing down heritage and traditions to their family and communities. If we were to talk about what art looked like in Arkansas, all regions of Arkansas, whether it's in the Delta or it's in the Ozarks or it's down close to Texas, if we were to talk about that in the 1800s, you're really talking about mostly what we would call folk art today. There were professional artists in the state, but there are far fewer people, and the people that were producing art were doing it really for themselves, their families, and their communities. So one of the most prominent examples of Arkansas art is really quilting. And the Arkansas quilt tradition goes all the way back to the earliest European and African settlers. And if you trace it back further than that, it's weaving and basket work and needlework and textile work that indigenous peoples were doing here. But the earliest settlers would have brought quilting traditions with them, and that was a huge part of what they did in their communities. But then other folk arts could be pots, making jugs for beverages or for preservation purposes. Is it just a piece of pottery, or is it something else? Arkansas pottery traditions are rich, and a pot could be functional and also beautiful and intended to be a work of art on its own. So special collections is, we do have artifacts. We're primarily historical documents and books. And with those, you can also see that artistic tradition and folk traditions. And just one example is people making engravings for printing and printmaking. So we have examples of engraved prints in Arkansas going all the way back to the middle of the 1800s. And that could be on paper, could be on leather, could be on wood. But those that sort of engraving, it again has a function. But you think of the hand that's crafting it, you think of the knowledge and the skill required to make something like that. And it survived because it's been passed down from families, through families over generations. They're the actual working with your hands. There's being a farmer, there's being the collecting the wood and crafting something that can be used to make art in and of itself. That's a really amazing thing about the Ozarks. Everything here is art in some ways, because the people in the region had to make do with so little for so long that everything could be crafted into something. And so is someone who's an expert fiddle player more of an artist, or a sculptor for that matter, or painter? Are they more of an artist than someone that knows how to put down all the tomatoes that come on your vine in late July and make a tomato relish like you get in the Ozarks, which is unlike anything you're going to have anywhere else in the world? I mean, where does the art end, really?
Now you can see that art has flourished in the Ozarks for thousands of years. From the spiritually sacred pottery work of Arkansas's original indigenous inhabitants, to the folk and European traditions of early settlers, the beauty of the region and the resourcefulness of its peoples inspired creation and built the foundations of Northwest Arkansas's reverence for the arts.